you have a Bible with you, if you want to turn to Mark chapter 10. Let's just get myself. Someone bought me a Starbucks coffee. I know. Aren't they great? The people that bought me the Starbucks coffee, that is, not necessarily. We're going to read from verse 46. And tonight we're going to look a little bit at the cry of the desperate. Sometimes I wonder how long a tether has to be before we get to the end of it. I'll say that again. Sometimes I wonder how long a tether has to be before we get to the end of it. And it seems that we have an inordinate amount of patience and almost a compliance with our circumstances and things we're going through, and that we're really good as Christians for asking God for things for other people. It's really easy to pray for other people, actually, in our quiet times, in our times when we're devoting ourselves to God and spending those sacred moments with Him. But we're not always that good at asking God for something for ourselves. Or is that just me? No? Okay. Well, we might find this helpful tonight, because I think the Lord just wants to meet one or two deeper needs tonight without embarrassing anyone. But I believe that the Lord just wants to minister to His boys and girls. That'd be lovely. So, verse 46 of Mark chapter 10, well-known account. I hate it, actually, I just say, and I sometimes do it myself, and I hate it when I do it. I hate it when we say, this is an interesting story. You know, as though we've made that up. Actually, it's an account. It's bedded in biblical history. It happened. So it's an account, isn't it? It's not a story. So it's an interesting account. So in verse 46, then they came to Jericho. And as Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, that is, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus stopped and said, call him. So they called to the blind man, cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you. Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped up to his feet and came to Jesus. What do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked him. The blind man said, Rabbi, I want to see. Go, said Jesus, your faith has healed you. Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. In this passage, we see here, and this is such a well-known account and passage that you probably have heard numerous sermons on this. If you've been around church for anything longer than 5 years, you would have heard a sermon on blind Bartimaeus. I don't know why we call him blind, because he isn't anymore. You know, but sometimes people get known by the condition which they present, don't they? They get known by it. Yeah, I'm sure my doctor, when they see me, goes, here comes Mr. Funnybone. Obviously not. Good job you're not my doctor. But in this passage, we begin to see three different voices. We have three different perspectives of what's going on. And so we're going to look at what actually comes out of people's mouths a little bit. C.T. Studd, the missionary, said this, whatever moves the heart wags the tongue. Whatever moves our heart wags the tongue. And so the first kind of voices that we have within this are actually the voice of the religious. Now, if you're religious tonight, you're not going to like me. But that's okay, because I don't particularly like religious people. Religious people walk around as though there's something smelly under their nose. Have you ever noticed that? And we dress that up as holiness, but that's not really being holy. But they sort of walk like this. You know, as Gareth was saying this morning, you listen to a sermon with the consecrated angle, but there are some people walk around with a consecrated smell under their nose, isn't there? It's just this sense that some people have about them. And the religious are always going to be scornful of those who are desperate for more from God. Always going to be scornful of that. And it's not that that religion, and I've fallen into this trap myself over the years, but it's not that religious people are inherently bad or insincere or anything like that, but actually, when it comes to things being done out of order, when it comes to things being done that aren't quite the norm, then they get scornful, and you hear things, God doesn't like that, I think, well, why? Why doesn't God like that? I remember somebody when in my young days as a Christian, it wasn't me, but I just have to tell you that it wasn't me before I tell you what they did, in case you're wondering. But he sat on the back row of church, he's new to church, and he lit up a cigarette. Right? Now, those people that smoke are generally comfortable. That's a sign of comfort and relaxation. And he lit up a cigarette. And one of the deacons ran up to him, smoking in the house of the Lord? Ignoring the fact that actually there was somebody puffing on the end of the cancer stick, and that it was better to have them there messy than not there at all. I'd rather have people in church messy than not there at all, really. And so when things happen that are out of the norm, religious people for some reason get upset by things, and actually at the same time they want to be the protectors of Jesus. And I'm not quite sure what they're protecting. It's as though if something goes wrong in church, that Jesus won't be able to handle it. Do you know what I mean by that? That we think, oh dear, I wonder how God feels about that. Oh dear, and bless her, today the team were leading and they sang the wrong tune to the wrong verse in Splendor of the King, which was fine, by the way, it's okay. We're not picking on you. But some people think, oh dear, oh dear, wonder, the Spirit's going to lift off the meeting. Something's going to go wrong. Well, do you know, Jesus isn't surprised by what we get up to. I have to say this to you, that actually he's not sitting at the right hand of the Father, nudging Father God going, what do you think they'll get up to next? I don't know, let's just peer into this. Well, I never. Who'd have thought? That's not how God is it? He knows everything. He takes these things in his stride. But for some reason, religious Christians seem to think that they have to in some way protect the reputation and the order of Jesus, when actually Jesus, if you read the Gospels, seem to do everything possible to break up the order of things and seem to do everything possible to upset the religious. He went out with tax collectors. He ate with prostitutes. Now we know that's all he did with prostitutes because he was sinless. But when the Bible says that he was tempted in every like manner as we are, and therefore is a great high priest who can empathize with us, is it sinful to suggest that when Jesus was eating at the table of some of the prostitutes that he was not tempted? Of course he was tempted, because he was tempted in every manner that we are, yet did not sin. And sometimes we think that we have to protect Jesus from the weird stuff that might happen in church if we just allow things to happen. Let me tell you, he can take it in his stride because the blessings of God are actually from him. They're from him. And so sometimes we're protecting him against himself, which sounds really paradoxical and oxymoronic and all these other strange words that I don't really know what they mean, but they sound good. But, it's Sunday evening and everyone's, fed up with lunch and that, so you're not really going to challenge me on that. I guess it's their... You might. I guess it's their... Behave yourself, Barbie. Hands up if you had to sleep this afternoon. Yes, right. There's about 6 of you who can't fall asleep tonight. I didn't. But what we end up actually doing is protecting Jesus from what we think is somehow disorderly or not right. You see, this is anonymous, but someone said, what is in the well of your heart will show up in the bucket of your speech. What's in the well of the heart shows up in the bucket of your speech. So what we discover with the religious is the voice of the religious carries scorn. They don't mean to be scornful, but they end up rejecting people. They believe they're the leaders in their community. In Luke 18, the parallel passage to Mark that I've just read out, in verse 39, it says, those who led the way rebuked him. Those who were at the front of the crowd, when Bartimaeus starts to cry out, God help me, Jesus help me, have mercy on me, those that led Those at the front, those that were saying, we're the important ones. We're clearing the way. And yesterday, during the Molsham Street Day, I went down and I watched Santa Claus come past on the off chance that I'd been good. Apparently I haven't. But there we are. Thank goodness that Jesus' grace is free. But it was very interesting because people were, trying to get photographs and things of the Land Rover pulling him along. But I noticed that the two security guards in their high-vis tabars were walking along in front. Out the way. Clear the way. On the pavement, please. Now, we know that's health and safety. All right, we know that has to be done. We know that we want to avoid accident. I understand that. But there are some people in church do exactly the same thing. We're at the front of things. We're at the forefront. No, out the way. Don't interrupt. Don't interrupt what we're doing here, because actually we're preparing the way for Jesus to come. And what actually happens is when we say to people that our meeting is more important than your need, we are pouring scorn on them for admitting that they have a need. And so it's not very long that we end up creating a church where people sit in I was going to say the pews, but the bouffant pink seats. We sit on these seats and we look around and we think, Lord, I know the Lord's speaking to me, but I couldn't possibly admit to it because everyone around me is so perfect. Just take a moment to look around. Admire the comedy of God. None of us are perfect. And so we don't want to be religious people that say, well, nothing else can happen because we are leading the way. We're protecting Jesus from what might leap out unexpectedly.